Turning on a bright small flashlight built into the helmet, the soldier headed into the depths of the ventilation shafts. "This is A1. He immediately began to report into the microphone that is built into the helmet. In his hands he still held a weapon ready and did not particularly distract from the terrain in front of him, ahead of the fork. "We keep to the right side. This is an operational room." Feedback was heard in the dynamics with minimal interference. "Accepted." "This is the head of the department." It was heard again in the speaker from the end of the connection that was in the operational room. "I will repeat once again." It imitates a human voice. Two soldiers walk in front of a small group, holding a gun at the ready, while the third goes behind their backs, facing backwards, in order to protect their rear if anything. If you hear a human voice, a serious tone was heard again in the speaker. "Immediately open fire." "Hey. I'm here," I shouted, again imitating one of the victims that I had recently managed to absorb. "Help." The soldier who was walking in front of the group did not lose his head and gave a clear order without even blinking. "Enemy. Open fire." Less than a second later, bright green flashes of fire immediately headed in my direction deep into the ventilation hole, which reflected their glow. I didn't waste any time and immediately rushed away from such pressure. I didn't really want to become a colander in the prime of my life. "Stop." Once again, one of the soldiers in the front row gave an order clearly and loudly and raised his right hand so that he could be understood by the one behind him. The second one was covered with perspiration either from excitement or he caught something out of the corner of his eye or the temperature in the ventilation shaft was rising. "This is the operations room." It was heard in the speaker when the soldiers continued their movement through the tunnel again, looking around the same way. "Set the enemy status." "This is A1, accepted." The commander of the team spoke into the microphone. They started walking almost one after the other, holding their weapons at the ready, and their rear was open. "The rest of you stay in your positions and cover A1." It was heard in the speakers of the other fighters of the present group. "Accepted." The soldier who has to protect the rear, as it were, answered. But here he stands with his back to me, and I calmly watch him almost closely. What stupid people, though. I immediately pulled my paws towards the unsuspecting fighter. Poor, trembling like a leaf in the wind in autumn weather. "And these are soldiers? And this is the protection of the ship? How funny." I do not argue, we are all people. "Oh, yes, I'm not." In the dynamics of another fighter on the general communication line, my victim's sigh and a loud scream at the top of his throat were heard. The man immediately turned back, still pointing the weapon forward. "A3. It was immediately heard in the speaker over the general communication line. "What happened?" From behind. There was a cry of my victim already with a wheeze because of the blood that abruptly began to flow into his throat. "The enemy is behind." His voice was fading and there was a cough. The fighter who turned around in time in our direction was immediately taken aback when he saw me. "A1. A2. Open fire." An order was immediately issued from the speaker. But in response, the fighters only mumbled. "Wait. Stop it." The victim, whom I grabbed in order to use at best as a shield, is on his knees in front of me and is shaking very much from the overflowing horror. "He took A3 hostage," exclaimed one of the fighters who joined the present in front of me. "If we open fire, we can injure A3. While they were hesitating, I looked out from behind the half-dead victim, threatening her with my sting, from which a drop of poison was dripping and waiting for my moment in this whole story. "Damn it. Open fire." They shouted the order into the microphone again. "A1. Orders from the speaker began to be heard again in raised tones. "Shoot to kill." "This is an order." "This is A1. The fighter stuttered and reluctantly raised his gun up. "I'm doing it." A bunch of bright green flashes of the beam immediately flew in my direction. Having thrown a human shield that I no longer needed and did not play any role, I ran away from these problems that were so eager to kill me. The discharges of their weapons casually, but still touched the surface of my skin, causing small scratches, but over and over again, small drops of my poisonous blood immediately began to scatter in different directions. As soon as I ran out to the fork, without thinking twice, I immediately dived into one of the turns, hiding from their direct and deadly fire. May they be empty to these knackers. "This is A2. I report, the fighter is wounded." One of the fighters immediately began to report into the microphone that they shot at me while I was taking my paws away from the crime scene, burning the ventilation passage behind me every now and then. Small drops of blood made tiny holes in the metal surface. I repeat. A fighter is wounded. A2 spoke into the microphone again. "Continue the pursuit." It was heard at the other end of the escort from the operational room. We have to catch him. The commander did not intend to retreat for a second, even at the cost of the soldiers' lives. It is better to sacrifice a little blood than your own. The soldier who was once my pseudo-shield was certainly not a tenant. He was shaking like he was having an epileptic fit. Blood was leaking out of the helmet, and something that looked like flesh began to seep through the ventilation holes in the suit. Damn. One of the soldiers swore, still unwilling to leave his colleague in trouble. Come to your senses. He did not let up, not losing hope that something that lies in front of him can still be saved. A3 is in shock. Exclaimed the second soldier, who was immediately squatting next to him. We inject. The injection has been administered. A mechanical voice rang out from the light blue screen that is on the half-corpse's arm. The screen is built into the mechanism of the suit that they are wearing. My victim exhaled and the body went limp, although her appearance did not inspire anything good, especially the flesh that formed almost minced meat, which protruded beyond the helmet. This is A1. The fighter spoke into the microphone. A3, an injection has been administered. We will continue the mission. This is the operations room. Immediately came from the speaker. Accepted. Damn monster. Suddenly someone cursed on the general communication stream. Catch him and tear him to pieces. It seems that one of the soldiers suddenly noticed a burned hole. He is also wounded. The green slime was still making a barely perceptible hiss, continuing to absorb the metal. It's crazy. The second soldier was taken aback when he saw it with his own eyes. Acidic blood. I have no idea what kind of monster it could be. They began to move slowly to the fork, and after squatting, one of them looked out in order to inspect the surrounding area and not to run into the enemy suddenly. Too narrow. One of them spoke, also examining the surroundings closest to them. What'll we do? Another asked while they were watching the course of the path made of drops of my blood. Go on. The answer to the question was immediately heard. This is A1. The soldier spoke into the microphone, reporting to his superiors. We ask for permission to use the special mode to effectively suppress the enemy. He listened to the silence on the other end of the line, and his face was covered with perspiration. This is the head of the department. Finally, an answer came from the operational room. You can use it. One of the soldiers on the screen of his device highlighted the scheme of the ventilation passage, which is right in front of them. The program flashed something, and he immediately pressed the activation key. Suddenly something entered their body. The pupil immediately shrank, and bright stripes from four sides passed to it, passing along the surface of the white. It was as if some liquid was gathering in the center. At the moment to the iris of the class. The soldier immediately twisted and fell on all fours, choking with a choking cough. The body was shivering and filled with unbearable pain, which made the fighter seem to cling to the metal coating, trying to hold on and not fall completely. To subdue, not to become broken. He managed to subdue the splash of foreign matter, and his fingers sank into the metal, as if into soft oil, drawing stripes and leaving grooves. I'm going to kill the damn bastard. The soldier uttered with wild aggression, picking up a machine gun and venting his anger with a blow to the floor. I'll be the first. Said the second, heading forward in order to get to my skin. Soon one of the soldiers sat down a little. He noticed clouds of steam rising up not far from him. There was also a green muck that made a hiss. After waiting a bit, he came closer and looked into the blood-burned hole in order to determine where I had escaped from them. This is A1. The soldier who had just come up behind him immediately began to report. A large hole was noticed in the ventilation shaft. There are no other traces. Most likely, A1 said, continuing his report, still examining the hole I burned. It went down into the corridor. This is the operations room. Accepted. They were immediately answered. We'll search the corridor, report the exact location. C06, next to the agricultural. The soldier answered while I was watching them from behind. These boobies bought into my trick. I immediately pushed off hard with my hind legs and rushed towards them. These bastards managed to turn around with their weapons in my direction. And the bright green shots from their guns immediately flew in my direction, but I spat on them. If you don't get rid of the problem now, then it can grow to a much larger scale. Trying to deftly squirm and avoid an accurate hit on me, I was getting closer to the victim every second, which I had already noticed and aimed at. The man only had time to sigh when he realized that the case smelled of kerosene. Having overtaken this tin can, I immediately decided to open it and, clutching the helmet on his head with my paw, immediately began to pull away sharply. Holding the helmet that is attached to the head of my victim, I struck a strong blow from which this bag of meat immediately sprayed blood in different directions. I didn't open the tin can, but I made it clear that it was reserved by me. Without giving up on my plan, I threw his head on the floor with a powerful blow, which caused the body to immediately follow. From the blow in which I put all my strength, the helmet immediately shattered into pieces in different directions. It is unlikely that the skull could survive, although who knows. An animal instinct seemed to rush over the second soldier. The irises of the eyes again became quite small, along with the pupils, and the veins on the face swelled and began to pulsate immediately. Without hesitating for long, he immediately opened a powerful fire to defeat, firing shots without interruption. But I did not lose the precious time that had been up to that moment and immediately closed the body of a human victim already immobilized. The victim became a sieve, but that's not how I get damage. Having clouded his vigilance, which was covered by the rage that was boiling in the soldier, I, hiding behind a human sacrifice, slowly moved closer to the distraught. As soon as he slowed down a little and there was a slight lull, my sting immediately jerked in his direction. But the soldier was not so stupid either. He immediately beat off my sting with a powerful blow. I was taken aback by this turn of events, and the man immediately rushed at me with his fists with one obsession to damage me. Die. He growled and immediately loomed over me, raising his hand for a powerful punch, while I was still sitting over the corpse of the last fighter. His fist got acquainted with the surface of the ventilation shaft, but not with my body. I deftly emerged from under him and immediately rushed away, trying to leave this place and again wait for the moment I needed to win. I saw the passage to the top and immediately tried to climb into it with minimal injuries as the soldier grabbed his weapon again and immediately opened fire in my direction, trying to kill me. But it didn't work out. He fell to his knees and immediately screamed, absorbed in the wild rage that he had been so diligently directing in my direction. Alas, but he's back with -1 fighter and certainly without my head and a lifeless corpse. With quick jumps and movements, I was running away from the battlefield, going further and further away from this furious can of minced meat. They are stronger, I reflected without slowing down, than I expected. In the game, I was able to cope with them, despite the special mode. I was thinking, remembering my past and the game developments that were then. I think we need to change the strategy. Now, no trick will work on A1. I summed up the results of this skirmish, scratching my temple. Then the best option would be. Oh, right. Suddenly, a light bulb lit up in my brain from an idea that immediately came into it. There's another way. I thought, thinking through all the nuances of this idea. In one of the ventilation shafts lies a human body in a blood-covered, no longer snow-white combat suit. He was still breathing, but very rarely and quite heavily. Not far from him is a weapon. The flashlight is still on his head. The body is shaking after the incident, and sweat has appeared on the face. Suddenly he noticed something out of the corner of his eye and immediately drew attention to it, glancing to the right. His breathing immediately increased significantly as soon as he saw my head. I was peeking around the bend in order to check out the area. He immediately started shouting, although I was advancing quite slowly and smoothly. It can be seen that my kind eyes and smile did not inspire confidence. This is exactly the case in them. I found something to be afraid of. How this piglet screams for quite a long time. It didn't work out slowly. I immediately rushed in his direction so that either extra witnesses or that brutalized A1 would not run to his call. I stopped almost a millimeter away from him. Emitting steam, I looked my victim straight in the eyes and one of my paws hovered in the air ready to jerk. My victim was lying flat and could not move while experiencing wild fear and crying incessantly. I admired it and ruled, dreaming to devour it as soon as possible. I knocked him to the floor, from which he coughed, but still obeyed without movement. One powerful and sharp blow to the chest through their canning protection, and splashes of brown blood immediately burst out of the body. I abruptly pulled my paw out of the hole I had formed, and rivers of blood immediately seemed to follow it, and the corpse itself could not stop the flow of blood that escaped from its mouth. Here they are, streams of predator wine with its inherent smell of iron and spreading heat. I sat quietly absorbing the still warm meat of my open canned food, filling my stomach after a long and difficult skirmish. I was sitting over my victim, taking out his insides and savoring every bite, filling up with strength for the upcoming fight, and the brown goo spread on the floor and surrounded us. Furthermore, I think that's enough. It flashed through my head while I was licking the remnants from my face, so to speak. In front of me lay an already opened scarlet tin can without its meat contents, only with bones. This will let them know, I decided, that A3 was attacked from the other side. Grinning, I returned the location of the suit to its original appearance, putting an empty helmet on top of it. I noticed the camera that is usually attached to the suits of all soldiers and immediately swung my paw. In the operations room, my body was visible on the big screen, and how I shamelessly destroyed their eye for omniscience, at the same time as if mocking all the work that they had done. A little more and the screen immediately rippled, losing the signal from the camera, which it destroyed. This is the operations room. It came from the speaker right there. The monster attacked A3. I repeat. The monster attacked. The soldier heard the noise and immediately rushed towards the sound, accelerating with every second. He hurried to the place he was looking for with all his might. Breathing became faster and soon it became difficult to breathe in the helmet from the accelerated rhythm and fear in anticipation of what he saw. Capillaries appeared on the whites of the eyes, like a mesh of thin red threads. A3. He exclaimed when he reached the desired area in the ventilation shaft. Are you okay? In front of his eyes lay the body of a fighter who had been injected not so long ago. The body lay lifeless leaning against a wall of the ventilation shaft, like a broken doll, almost completely covered in blood. A3. Answer. The soldier said again, coming closer to his partner who was passed out. He immediately pulled his hand towards him, holding a weapon in the other. Damn. He cursed and took the hand of the man lying in front of him. He began to press something on the blue screen built into the suit of a man in a blackout. Take your medicine urgently. He said. Suddenly, with a sharp jerk, my tail burst out of the stomach of the lying man in the direction of the unsuspecting soldier who came. He stared dumbfounded at what was left of the soldier in front of him and couldn't even believe his eyes. He coughed and rolled his eyes. The irises of his eyes immediately shrank, and on his face bulging veins filled with the green liquid of the poison that I had just injected imparted in different directions. My sting smoothly disconnected and a viscous green liquid stretched from it to the wound. The soldier was knocked over on his back, and he immediately began to choke on his own blood, which also sprayed out of his throat outside the suit. He tried to greedily grab the air that was so lacking and automatically tried to grab his throat, trying to help. While he, trembling, turned over on his stomach and tried to stop the bleeding, I put one of my paws through the hole in the lying suit. The soldier stretched out in surprise, looking back in my direction, and his flesh turned into a kind of minced meat. I barely, but still left the place where I was waiting for my victim. I was smeared all over in different shades of blood. I looked at this frightened rabbit who had fallen so naively into the snares I had set. I straightened up and looked down at him menacingly, my eyes flashing, covered in the blood of his already dead friends. Hey! The soldier shouted, trying to run away from me. But what a naive bug he is. It's so funny to watch him. Shaking, spitting minced meat, not enough to shout mommy to complete the picture. I deftly grabbed his head with one paw, the other grabbed his neck. Well, shall we twist the light bulbs? He was even more scared and sprayed blood through the hole of the helmet. I opened this tin can, freeing the soldier's head from these metal vises. Why are you crying? You probably almost suffocated there. Oh, yes, you can't breathe enough before you die. Have a nice day. To me. Appetite. I said, flashing my eyes and enjoying his frozen horror on his face. Eyes dilated almost to the limit, a small pupil, tears flowing like a river, an open mouth. Here it is, a mute scream. I slowly but surely, as if savoring the moment, began to butcher my victim, and he seemed to lose consciousness from pain shock, and his eyes rolled up to the limit. I was enjoying the moment, and my head slowly began to detach from my body like rags. It wasn't worth much effort, but the crunching and slurping sound was like a beautiful melody of my victory. I opened my mouth, lifting his head up, and began to enjoy the delicious food. Not far from us lies the helmet of my victim, calmly illuminating my feast with a flashlight and covered with blood splashes. I wonder if they enjoy this movie by buying tickets to the front row? Let nothing be heard through the communicator, but I know they are afraid. Fuck. What's it? It spread through the operational room, and people immediately fell to the floor from shock. The visibility of the helmet camera is displayed on the full screen, which is facing in my direction while I'm eating another of their soldiers. Someone froze with a scream on his lips, someone began to vomit while squatting right there. Even the head of the technical team froze in a silent scream, not taking his eyes off what was happening on the screen. She'll kill us all. I heard loud screams of a brunette with a scar, also looking at what was happening on the screen and sweating. Spider webs stretched not only in the ventilation shaft. They're next in line. And so. I was thinking about the further plan of my actions. Where will the enemy come from this time? 6 were killed, there were still 90 soldiers and officers. Having received my message, they will mobilize all their forces. I thought as I made my way through the ventilation shafts. I know that there is no special equipment on this ship. One problem is the weapons. I was still thinking as I made my way through the metal ventilation shafts in a semi-bent state. If they arm themselves with plasma guns, I'm fucked. I was thinking about the worst outcome, changing my position to crawling on all fours. How narrow it is here. Plasma cannons are weapons with high firepower used by the fleet during combat operations. A powerful flash of a green beam aimed at one of the military trucks and incinerates it immediately. Most often they are used to destroy enemy ships or tanks. However, the guns are so big and heavy that they cannot be used alone. A huge powerful weapon that can be lifted and held by at least 2 people. But there is a lighter, more expensive weapon. The handle fits in the palm of one person and does not require the support of a partner. In addition, each Megacorp unit is equipped with one plasma launcher. A man in a uniform with powerful armor holds a huge weapon that barely fits on his shoulder and releases a powerful jet of a green-tinged laser. I doubt there is anything like that here. I grunted without slowing down my speed. Suddenly I reached one of the grills of the ventilation shaft and catching someone's noise, I immediately stopped and decided to listen. The soldiers are moving into the agricultural compartment. I assumed, having studied their direction. They were in a uniform of a different color and headed in an even formation. They had a black-tinged uniform with white pseudo-jackets on their backs. They think that I will sit in one place. I decided very well and continued on my way. This is my chance. While everyone is busy looking for me, I immediately quickened my pace. I will visit the management. If the leadership positions are thinned out, then there will be no one to control the ship. Besides, we need to eliminate Arnold. He is a threat to my existence. Head of the Crisis Management Department. A painfully familiar voice exclaimed. Where did this monster come from? Besides, what kind of monster is this? I caught up with the ventilation outlet I needed, and I hope I managed to get to the beginning of an interesting performance. The head of the logistics department was transporting unknown creatures on a ship. The man in the blue uniform explained. I guess this is one of them. How can you say that? The ship's captain, impressed by what had happened, did not let up. We even used enhanced equipment, but it didn't help anything. The captain persisted while I watched him closely. Oh, so this is also one of the heads of the department. I thought. Enhanced equipment is a lifeline in space. I grinned at what I heard, worth a lot of money. Trying to cut costs, they put an end to their lives. If we had normal equipment, this would not have happened. A dark-haired man in a blue uniform spoke, and the captain immediately clenched his jaws with anger. You made a mistake. The enemy is dangerous and very smart, said the dark-haired man with a scar. Besides, we now know that it can imitate human speech. And you're just talking about it now? The captain of the ship did not give up his positions. Data collection is of paramount importance. The head of the Crisis Management Department spoke quite calmly. All actions are based on known information. But the captain sked in response to the interlocutor's argument. All this was observed by the head of the technical team and the head of the security department without much desire to get into their squabble. I've already sent soldiers, the dark-haired man with the scars said, but I have a request. Which one? The captain asked, gritting his teeth in anger. Requesting permission to use a plasma launcher. Arnold spoke, which shocked the captain. What? The bald man was taken aback by what he heard. Are you crazy? The head of the security department immediately exclaimed. This weapon is designed to fight pirates. Head of the Crisis Management Department. The head of the technical team also exclaimed. We're on a ship. Let it be a former battleship. The skirmish continued, but to use something like this on board? If you are so eager to die, go into space alone. How much noise? The answer immediately followed. Apparently, they really have weapons, I thought, without distracting myself from their friendly conversation in quotation marks. The enemies are confused, I decided, and launched a turquoise-tinged pulse in order to explore the area, the perfect moment to catch prey. Arnold is too far away, I decided, studying their location and planning my attack. Closest to me. I stretched out everything, also studying with the help of an impulse. This guy. A man with a light color of hair slicked back with gel, looked at something in fright and was covered in sweat. Most likely, he did not take his attention off the digital screen in the operating room. Senior researcher Wei. I remembered his data. The one who torments number 26 every day. Then I'll focus on him. I decided anyway. I was planning to kill him someday anyway, I thought, and raised my paw back, preparing for an attack. I sharply hit the ventilation grate with my paw and caught on it. Thus, I created a loud sound and attracted attention to myself. This sound was instantly heard by the brunette with the scar and immediately turned around at the noise I created. The grate immediately flew to the side, and I fell out of the ventilation shaft with my mouth open, ready to absorb the victim I had chosen, but the man froze on the spot when he saw me. My mouth hovered over a frightened man frozen with a mask of horror on his face. A couple of millimeters away from my rather sharp teeth. I bit into his face instantly as if I had been starving for months, and with a loud slurping began to absorb food, spraying blood on the floor surface and scattering pieces of flesh in different directions. I knocked this man over on his back. Furthermore, I chewed out half of my face and a whole eyeball right in front of the head of the medical team and the head of the security department, who were frozen with horror. They couldn't move and just watched what was happening for a while, and I just drooled, mixed with the remnants of blood on the already present corpse. Not lingering on one victim for long and wasting time, I immediately rushed at the head of the medical team and the head of the technical team, while they ran away screaming, calling me a monster. The next one I clung to was the head of the security department. I immediately dug my sharp teeth into his right shoulder, thereby preventing him from moving on. After that, I pierced through the head of the medical team with my sharp sting. Blood immediately gushed out of the wound, splashing in different directions on the passing people of this ship. "Save me!" The fleeing workers were shouting. A girl with a square haircut, a brunette in a medical gown, was hurrying in front of me. Most likely, she was a lab worker, and a dark-haired guy in a black short-sleeve sweatshirt was also running next to her. They were horrified to see me and what I was doing at the moment. The body leaned forward. Blood immediately gushed from the back of his head, staining the leather upholstery of his seat. On the surrounding floor in this room lay a pile of corpses with their arms outstretched in different directions. Blood streams almost covered the entire floor, soaking into the pores of the tile. Suddenly I felt shots in the back. Someone opened fire on me, and short rays of a green shade bit into my skin. But since it was not the kind of weapon that would cause me damage, these shots only seemed to tickle me. I thought he was going to run away, flashed through my mind when I saw Arnold standing a meter away with a gun pointed in my direction. What is he doing? He doesn't even have enhanced equipment on him. I thought, examining it completely. I'm not afraid of such a gun, maybe he's sure of something? Thoughts raced through my head. While I was studying the situation, the brunette who was standing a meter away from me clenched his teeth from dissatisfaction with what was happening, still holding the gun as if he expected something. Well, if he wants to die. I decided, already thinking about how to deal with this person. Suddenly I was struck by lightning. Pictures of the future immediately began to appear in front of me like a videotape. Here's the first, he shoots me with this gun, which does me no harm. Picture 2, I still got angry and decided to take advantage of this moment. I pierce his body at chest level with my sting, thereby inflicting a fatal blow. Picture number 3, he shows me another weapon that he took out of his coat from somewhere, and it immediately comes to me, but it's too late that I fell into his trap. Into his cleverly placed snares. He fires a plasma pistol, and powerful charges of green fire reach my flesh. My head immediately shatters into many small pieces. That's the end of the game, as they say. I stand with my mouth open watching these pictures of the future that supposedly can happen. Most likely, this is a premonition of a predator or something similar. Psychic abilities, which I received during evolution. Fuck, I cursed right there in my mind. A plasma pistol. I learn from mistakes, but it's also better to learn from the future. Sweat immediately broke out on my face. I began to think about what I should do anyway. Expensive and light weapons with high destructive power. I stood and pondered at a distance from the object that was in a hurry to finish me off. If he hits me with that thing, I'm a dead man. I decided. Damn. Apparently he has something to do with the Eugene family. I decided, however, based on the information I had received before, while he was standing and did not make any movements. He sighed and immediately squinted, as if calculating whether that moment had come or not, in order to get his secret weapon that he had hidden. Have you noticed? He asked immediately and threw away the gun that he had used before. He pulled back his coat and took out what was hidden in the inside pocket. It really was the plasma pistol he had stashed away. Seeing his colleagues on the ship, the captain and the head of the technical team were immediately surprised. They didn't expect to see this weapon. It was a medium-sized black weapon with some kind of small flask, filled with something of a turquoise hue, most likely it was a battery or some kind of charge. A plasma gun? The captain asked. Expensive weapons. The head of the technical team exclaimed, looking in our direction. I don't know what you are, but I have one suggestion. A brunette with a scar on his lip spoke while threatening, still already with a plasma cannon. A monster with many abilities. The head of the crisis management department grinned. You look like my master Saihin Eugene.